Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that a lot of people get wrong about attraction. You don't make a man addicted to you by trying to impress him every second of the day. No, no, no. That's not how this works. You make a man value you, truly value you, by understanding who you are, what you bring to the table, and how you carry yourself when nobody's watching. See, what I'm about to share with you isn't about manipulation. It's about power. It's about presence. It's about becoming the kind of woman a man doesn't just want but can't forget. Confidence is the foundation of attraction, and not the kind of confidence people try to fake for attention, but the kind that comes from truly knowing who you are and being comfortable in that truth. See, a lot of people think confidence is about being the loudest in the room or having the most eyes on you, but real confidence is much quieter than that. It shows up in how you walk, how you speak, how you respond, and most importantly, how you don't react when something doesn't go your way. A confident woman doesn't feel the need to chase validation because she already approves of herself. And that alone changes the entire dynamic between her and a man. When you carry yourself with confidence, you send a message without saying a word. You're telling him that you value yourself, that your time matters, and that your presence is something special. A man can feel that energy almost immediately. It's not something he analyzes logically, it's something he senses emotionally. He starts to lean in, not because you're trying to pull him, but because there's something about you that feels different. And that difference comes from the fact that you are not trying to prove your worth, you already know it. That's what makes him curious. That's what makes him pay attention. Now, here's the part people don't like to hear. Confidence also means being okay with not being liked by everyone. That's right. When you're truly confident, you understand that not every man is going to choose you, and you're perfectly fine with that. Because your goal is not to be chosen by everyone. Your goal is to be chosen by the right one. And when you stop trying to fit into what you think someone else wants, you start becoming exactly what the right person is looking for. That's the shift. That's where the power comes in. Confidence also shows up in your standards. A woman who knows her worth doesn't accept bare minimum effort. She doesn't entertain inconsistency, disrespect, or confusion. She doesn't sit around wondering where she stands because she already decided where she stands. And if a man can't meet her there, she doesn't try to lower herself to make him comfortable. She simply moves on. That right there is one of the most attractive things you can do because it shows strength, and strength commands respect. But let me tell you something else. Confidence is not about perfection. It's not about having everything figured out or never making mistakes. It's about owning who you are, flaws and all, and still standing tall. When you can laugh at yourself, when you can admit when you're wrong, when you can grow without losing your sense of self, that's real confidence. And that kind of authenticity is magnetic. People are drawn to it because it feels genuine, not forced. A lot of women lose their confidence the moment they start liking a man. Suddenly they overthink everything. They question their worth, they second guess their actions, and they start adjusting themselves just to keep his attention. But the truth is, the moment you start doing that, you're moving away from the very thing that attracted him in the first place. Confidence doesn't disappear just because you care about someone. If anything, that's when it matters the most. Because a man respects a woman who can maintain her sense of self even when emotions are involved. And here's another thing. Confidence is built, not given. You don't wake up one day and magically have it. It comes from experiences, from learning, from overcoming situations where you thought you couldn't stand on your own but did anyway. Every time you choose yourself, every time you walk away from something that doesn't serve you, every time you set a boundary and stick to it, you're building that confidence, and over time it becomes unshakable. When a man encounters a woman with that kind of confidence, it does something to him. It challenges him. It makes him want to step up because he knows he's not dealing with someone who will accept anything less than what she deserves, and that's where attraction deepens. It's no longer just about looks or charm, it becomes about respect, admiration, and a desire to be worthy of her presence. So if you're trying to figure out how to create that kind of impact, stop focusing on what you can do to impress him and start focusing on how you see yourself, because everything begins there. The way you think about yourself. It shapes the way you show up in the world, and the way you show up determines how people respond to you. Confidence is not just a trait, it's a lifestyle. It's a decision you make every single day to stand in your truth, to honor your value, and to never shrink yourself just to fit into someone else's expectations. And when you reach that point, when you truly embrace who you are without hesitation or apology, you don't have to chase attention anymore. Attention comes to you. Respect comes to you. And most importantly, the right kind of love finds its way to you because you finally understand that you were never meant to beg for it in the first place. Mystery is one of the most misunderstood elements of attraction because people often confuse it with playing games or being distant for the sake of control. That's not what real mystery is. Mystery is about not revealing everything all at once, about allowing space for curiosity to grow naturally instead of overwhelming someone with your constant access to every thought, feeling, and detail of your life. When everything is immediately available, there is nothing left to discover, and without discovery, interest begins to fade. A man doesn't stay engaged because he knows everything, he stays engaged because he wants to know more. Think about how people value things. Anything that feels too easy, too available, too predictable often loses its excitement. But when something requires a little effort, when there's a sense of unfolding, it becomes more meaningful. The same principle applies here. When you give a man time to wonder, when you allow him to experience you in layers instead of all at once, you create a sense of intrigue that keeps him mentally and emotionally invested. He starts thinking about you even when you're not around. Not because you told him everything, but because there's still something left for him to figure out. Mystery also shows up in how you communicate. You don't need to respond to every message instantly, and you don't need to explain yourself excessively. When you are constantly available and always explaining every move, it removes any sense of anticipation. But when you live your life fully, when you have your own rhythm, your own priorities, your own world that doesn't revolve entirely around him, that creates a natural distance that draws him closer. He begins to respect your time more because he sees that it's not something he can take for granted. Now, let's be clear about something. Mystery is not about being cold or emotionally unavailable. It's not about ignoring someone or making them feel unimportant. That kind of behavior doesn't create attraction, it creates confusion and distance in the wrong way. Real mystery is warm but not overwhelming. It's engaging but not overexposed. It's about balance. You show interest, but you don't lose yourself in the process. You share parts of who you are, but you don't feel the need to share everything immediately. A lot of. People make the mistake of over-talking when they're nervous or when they really like someone. They fill every silence, they overshare personal details too soon, and they try to create closeness by speeding up the process. But real connection doesn't need to be rushed. In fact, when it is rushed, it often loses depth. Mystery allows connection to develop at a natural pace. It gives both people time to truly understand each other instead of forming quick impressions that may not last. Another important part of mystery is unpredictability. Not in a chaotic or unstable way, but in a way that keeps things fresh. When a man feels like he has you completely figured out, when every reaction, every move, every response becomes predictable, the excitement starts to fade. But when there are moments that surprise him, your perspective, your humor, your decisions, it keeps him engaged. It reminds him that there is more to you than what he sees on the surface. Mystery is also deeply connected to your independence. When you have your own life, your own passions, your own goals, you naturally become more intriguing. You're not sitting around waiting for someone to entertain you or complete your day. You already have a full life, and he becomes a part of it, not the center of it. That dynamic shifts everything. It makes him see you as someone who has value, not someone who depends on him for validation or excitement. There's something powerful about a woman who can be present in a moment, enjoy the connection, laugh, engage, and then step back into her own world without losing herself. That ability creates a sense of balance that is incredibly attractive. It tells him that while you enjoy his presence, you don't rely on it to feel whole. And that kind of energy makes him want to come closer, not pull away. Mystery also protects your emotional space. When you don't reveal everything too quickly, you give yourself time to observe, to understand, and to decide whether someone truly deserves deeper access to you. Not everyone earns that right immediately, and that's okay. Taking your time doesn't mean you're playing games, it means you're being intentional. It means you value yourself enough to move at a pace that feels right for you. And here's something important to remember. Mystery is not about hiding who you are. It's about revealing who you are in a way that has depth and timing. It's about allowing someone to experience you gradually instead of overwhelming them all at once. When done right, it creates a natural rhythm where interest grows, curiosity deepens, and connection becomes stronger over time. So instead of trying to keep someone's attention by doing more, saying more, or giving more, sometimes the real power lies in doing less, in allowing space, in letting things breathe. Because when there is space, there is room for imagination. And when there is imagination, there is emotional investment. And that investment is what keeps someone coming back, not because they have to, but because they genuinely want to understand you more. Respecting yourself first is not just a relationship principle, it is a life standard, and without it, everything else becomes unstable. When a woman does not respect herself, she begins to depend on other people to define her worth. And the moment you allow someone else to define your value, you lose control over how you are treated. Self-respect is the quiet authority you carry that tells the world what you will and will not accept. It is not loud, it is not aggressive, but it is firm. And people feel it immediately. A woman who respects herself does not beg for attention, does not tolerate confusion, and does not stay in situations where she feels constantly unsure of where she stands. She understands that love should not feel like anxiety and connection should not feel like constant uncertainty. If a man is inconsistent, disrespectful, or emotionally unavailable, she does not try to fix him or convince him to change. She simply observes the behavior and responds accordingly. That response might be distance, silence, or walking away completely, because she understands one simple truth: what you accept becomes your standard. Self-respect begins with boundaries. Boundaries are not walls to push people away, they are guidelines that show people how to treat you. When you have no boundaries, you become accessible to everything, including things that are not good for you. But when you establish boundaries, you create structure around your emotional and mental space. You decide what is acceptable and what is not. And more importantly, you stick to it. A boundary without enforcement is just a suggestion. and people will always test what is only a suggestion. Now let's be real about something. Many people struggle with self-respect not because they don't know what is right, but because they are afraid of losing someone. That fear is powerful. It makes people tolerate behavior they normally would never accept. It makes them ignore red flags, make excuses, and settle for less than they deserve. But the truth is, every time you abandon yourself to keep someone else, you lose a piece of your own identity. And over time, that loss becomes heavier than the relationship itself. Self-respect also means not chasing what is not pursuing you. If someone is interested, it will show in their actions. You should not have to convince, persuade, or repeatedly prove your worth to someone who truly sees it. When you respect yourself, you understand that mutual effort is not optional, that is necessary. You meet halfway, not all the way alone. And if you are constantly the one trying to keep things alive, then you are not in a balanced connection. Another important part of self-respect is emotional control. This does not mean you suppress your feelings or pretend you do not care. It means you do not allow your emotions to lead you into decisions that compromise your dignity. You can feel deeply and still choose wisely. You can care about someone and still walk away if they are not good for you. Emotional intelligence is knowing the difference between attachment and alignment. Attachment makes you stay even when things are hurting you. Alignment allows you to leave when things no longer match your values. A woman with self-respect does not compete for attention. She does not compare herself to others or try to outshine someone else to feel worthy. She understands that her value is not determined by how she measures against someone else, but by how she carries herself. Comparison weakens confidence, but self-respect strengthens identity. When you know who you are, you do not feel threatened by who someone else is. Self-respect also reflects in how you respond to disrespect. You do not argue endlessly to prove a point to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. You do not over-explain yourself to someone who has already decided not to value your voice. Instead, you respond with clarity. Sometimes that clarity is silence. Sometimes it is distance. And sometimes it is simply choosing not to continue the conversation, because protecting your peace is more important than winning an argument. There is also a difference between being understanding and being over-accommodating. Understanding means you can empathize, you can listen, you can see things from another perspective. Over-accommodating means you consistently sacrifice your own needs to avoid discomfort or rejection. Self-respect does not require you to ignore empathy, but it does require balance. You can understand someone without allowing their behavior to harm you. When a man encounters a woman who truly respects herself, it creates a different kind of dynamic. He recognizes that she is not easy to manipulate, not easy to confuse, and not willing to accept less than she deserves. That does not push the right man away. It challenges him to show up better, because he knows she is not. If you're staying out of fear, she is staying out of choice. And choice is powerful. Self-respect is also about consistency. It is easy to set standards when emotions are calm, but real self-respect is proven when emotions are involved. When you are upset, when you miss someone, when you feel lonely, that is when your standards are tested. And staying consistent in those moments is what builds real strength. Because anyone can value themselves when it is easy, but not everyone can maintain that value when it is difficult. At the deepest level, self-respect is about never abandoning yourself for temporary connection. It is understanding that no relationship, no matter how strong it seems, is worth losing your identity. Because at the end of the day, if you lose yourself trying to keep someone else, you will end up with neither peace nor true connection. And when you choose yourself consistently, everything else begins to align in a healthier, more stable way. Emotional connection is the kind of attraction that goes deeper than appearance, deeper than charm, and deeper than surface level chemistry. It is what makes a man remember you long after the conversation ends, not because of what you wore or what you said, but because of how you made him feel. When emotional connection is present, it creates a sense of safety, understanding, and resonance that physical attraction alone cannot sustain. A man can meet many people in his life, but he will not easily forget the one who made him feel truly seen. At the core of emotional connection is listening. Not the kind of listening where you are just waiting for your turn to speak, but the kind where you are genuinely present. When a woman listens with attention, without interrupting, without judgment, and without rushing to fix everything, it creates a space where a man feels comfortable opening up. Most people are used to being heard, but not truly understood. So when someone actually takes the time to understand, it stands out in a powerful way. Emotional connection also grows through emotional safety. A man will not open up deeply if he feels judged, criticized, or dismissed. He opens up when he feels that he can be himself without pretending. This does not mean you agree with everything he says, but it means you create an environment where honesty is not punished. When a man feels emotionally safe, he shares more of his thoughts, fears, dreams, and insecurities. And that level of openness builds a bond that is not easily replaced. Another important aspect is authenticity. Emotional connection cannot be built on performance or pretending to be someone you are not. It grows when both people show up as they truly are. When a woman is real about her thoughts, her emotions, and even her imperfections, it invites the same honesty from the other person. Pretending creates distance, but authenticity creates closeness. People connect more deeply with realness than perfection because realness feels human, and humans connect with humanity. Shared emotional experiences also strengthen connection. It is not just about the good moments, but also about how two people handle difficult moments together. When there is support during stress, encouragement during failure, and understanding during conflict, the bond deepens. It shows that the connection is not dependent only on convenience or comfort, but also on emotional resilience. That is what builds long-term attachment. Emotional connection also requires patience. You cannot rush someone into opening up emotionally. Everyone has different emotional timelines based on their past experiences, fears, and trust levels. When you rush emotional intimacy, it often creates resistance. But when you allow it to develop naturally without pressure, it becomes more stable and meaningful. Patience shows respect for the other person's emotional process. Another key element is empathy. Empathy is the ability to feel with someone, not just for them. It is understanding their emotions from their perspective rather than your own. When a man feels that you genuinely understand what he is going through, even if you have never experienced it yourself, it creates a deep emotional bridge. Empathy does not require agreement, it requires understanding. And that understanding builds trust over time. Emotional connection also grows through appreciation. When a man feels that his efforts, his presence, and his intentions are noticed and valued, it strengthens his emotional attachment. People naturally gravitate toward environments where they feel appreciated rather than taken for granted. Appreciation does not mean exaggerating everything, but it does mean acknowledging the positive things someone brings into your life. That acknowledgement creates emotional warmth. There is also power in vulnerability. When a woman is willing to share her own emotions, fears, or experiences in a balanced way, it encourages emotional openness from the other side. Vulnerability is not weakness, it is emotional honesty. It says, I trust you enough to show you who I really am. And that trust often invites the same in return. Emotional connection is built when both people are willing to be seen beyond their surface. Consistency plays a major role as well. Emotional connection cannot survive constant emotional confusion. When someone is warm one day and distant the next without clarity, it creates insecurity. But when emotional behavior is consistent, it builds stability. Stability allows trust to grow, and trust is the foundation of deep emotional attachment. Without consistency, emotional connection becomes fragile. Another important factor is emotional presence. Being physically present is not enough if emotionally you are disconnected. Emotional presence means you are engaged, aware, and responsive in the moment. It means you are not distracted, not emotionally absent, and not treating conversations like background noise. When someone feels that you are truly present with them, it creates a strong sense of importance and value. Emotional connection is not about intensity alone, it is about depth. Intensity can come quickly and fade just as fast, but depth takes time to build and last longer. Depth is created through shared understanding, mutual respect, emotional honesty, and consistent care. It is the difference between temporary attraction and meaningful attachment. When emotional connection is strong, everything else becomes more stable. Misunderstandings are easier to resolve, communication becomes more open, and distance does not easily break the bond. Because what holds people together is no longer just attraction, it is emotional significance. And when someone becomes emotionally significant, they are not easily replaced. At its highest level, emotional connection is about making someone feel that they are not just seen, but understood, accepted, and valued in a way that feels rare. And when a man experiences that kind of emotional depth, it stays with him long after the moment has passed, because emotional memory is often stronger than physical memory.